Pride and Prejudice, the second novel by Jane Austen, was published in 1813. As a novel of manners, it explores the personal growth of its protagonist, Elizabeth Bennet, who navigates the consequences of premature judgments while learning to distinguish between outward appearances and true virtue. The important characters of the novel include Elizabeth Bennet, the novel's heroine and the second eldest of the five Bennet sisters. Elizabeth is intelligent, spirited, and charming. She takes pride in her ability to judge character, yet she frequently misinterprets people's true natures, leading to personal growth throughout the story. Fitzwilliam Darcy is Bingley's closest friend, who is a wealthy and honorable man, the brother of Georgiana and the nephew of Lord Catherine de Bourgh. While he possesses strong principles, his rigid sense of class distinction initially makes him appear aloof and arrogant. Jane Bennet, the eldest of the Bennet sisters. Jane is kind, beautiful, and gentle to a fault. She refuses to think ill of others and always seeks the best in people, sometimes to her own detriment. George Wickham, an officer in the local militia. Wickham presents himself as a charming and refined gentleman. However, beneath his polished exterior, he is deceitful, manipulative, and opportunistic, willing to exploit others for his own gain. Mrs. Bennet, a talkative and superficial woman, Mrs. Bennet is consumed by the goal of securing advantageous marriages for her five daughters. Lacking self awareness, she frequently embarrasses Elizabeth and Jane with her excessive gossip and poor manners. Mr. Bennet, a sharp witted and educated man, Mr. Bennet is burdened by an ill suited marriage. Though he possesses a good heart, he often retreats into sarcasm and indifference, failing to provide the necessary guidance for his family. The story begins in a small village called Longbourn, where the Bennet family lives. The Bennets have five unmarried daughters: Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia. Their mother, Mrs. Bennet, is obsessed with finding husbands for them. When a rich young man named Mr. Bingley moves into a nearby estate called Netherfield Park, the whole village buzzes with excitement. The Bennets meet Mr. Bingley at a ball where he dances with Jane, the eldest daughter, and seems to like her. However, Mr. Bingley's friend Mr. Darcy acts cold and refuses to dance with Elizabeth, making everyone think he is proud and rude. Over time, Mr. Darcy starts to notice Elizabeth's wit and charm, even though he first dismissed her. Jane and Mr. Bingley's friendship grows, and Jane visits Netherfield. On her way, she gets caught in the rain, falls sick, and stays there to recover. Elizabeth walks through muddy fields to visit Jane, arriving with a dirty dress. Miss Bingley, Mr. Bingley's snobbish sister, looks down on Elizabeth, especially when she sees Mr. Darcy paying attention to her. Back home, the Bennets meet Mr. Collins, a silly clergyman who will inherit their home because the law only allows male heirs to inherit property. Mr. Collins proposes to Elizabeth, but she rejects him, hurting his pride. Around this time, the Bennet girls befriend soldiers stationed nearby. One soldier, Mr. Wickham, tells Elizabeth that Mr. Darcy cheated him out of money. Elizabeth believes him and dislikes Darcy even more. Winter arrives, and Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy suddenly leave for London. Jane is heartbroken. To make matters worse, Mr. Collins marries Charlotte Lucas, Elizabeth's best friend. Charlotte admits she married him for financial security, not love. Jane visits London hoping to see Mr. Bingley, but his sister treats her rudely, and Mr. Bingley ignores her. The Bennet girls' chances of marriage seem hopeless. In spring, Elizabeth visits Charlotte. who now lives near Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Mr. Darcy's wealthy aunt. While there, Elizabeth meets Mr. Darcy, who shocks her by proposing marriage. She angrily refuses, accusing him of ruining Jane's happiness with Mr. Bingley and mistreating Wickham. Darcy leaves but later sends a letter explaining his actions. He admits he discouraged Mr. Bingley from pursuing Jane because he thought Jane did not truly love him. He also reveals Wickham is a liar who tried to elope with Darcy's younger sister to steal her inheritance. Elizabeth realizes she misjudged Darcy. When she returns home, she avoids Wickham. Meanwhile, Lydia, the youngest Bennet sister, convinces her father to let her spend the summer in Brighton, where Wickham's army unit is stationed. Elizabeth travels with her aunt and uncle, the Gardiners, to the countryside. They visit Pemberley, Darcy's grand estate, and hear from servants how kind and generous he is. Unexpectedly, Darcy arrives and acts warmly toward Elizabeth, inviting her to meet his sister. Suddenly, Elizabeth receives urgent news. Lydia has run away with Wickham. The family fears scandal because the couple is not married. Mr. Bennet and Mr. Gardiner search for them but fail. Eventually, Mr. Gardiner writes that Wickham agreed to marry Lydia in exchange for money. The Bennets assume Mr. Gardiner paid Wickham, but Elizabeth later discovers Darcy secretly arranged everything to protect her family's reputation. After the wedding, Lydia and Wickham briefly visit Longbourn but leave for the north. Mr. Bingley returns to Netherfield and proposes to Jane, who happily accepts. Darcy visits the Bennets but says nothing about marrying Elizabeth. Then Lady Catherine storms into Longbourn, demanding Elizabeth promise never to marry Darcy. Elizabeth refuses, saying she will make her own choices. Soon after, Darcy confesses his love to Elizabeth again. This time she accepts, admitting her feelings have changed. The story ends with Jane and Elizabeth both married to the men they love, bringing joy to their family. Throughout the story, misunderstandings and pride almost keep the characters apart, but by learning the truth and overcoming their prejudice, they find happiness. Elizabeth and Darcy's journey shows how first impressions can be wrong, and love often requires humility and forgiveness. The Bennet sisters' experiences highlight the challenges women faced in a society where marriage was often the only path to security. In the end, kindness and honesty triumph, proving that true love can conquer even the deepest misunderstandings. What are the themes that we see in Pride and Prejudice? Pride permeates the characters' attitudes and interactions, shaping their judgments and leading them to make impulsive mistakes. Both Elizabeth and Darcy are blinded by their pride, preventing them from recognizing their true feelings for one another. Darcy's sense of superiority due to his social standing causes him to look down on those outside his immediate circle, while Elizabeth takes excessive pride in her ability to assess others, stubbornly clinging to her initial opinions even when faced with contradictory evidence. This is why she initially despises the well intentioned Darcy while admiring the deceitful Wickham. However, the novel suggests that while no one is entirely free of pride, a strong moral foundation allows one to overcome it and lead a life of integrity and kindness. Elizabeth and Darcy help each other see past their flaws. Darcy sheds his arrogance, and Elizabeth learns not to trust her judgments too hastily. On the other hand, prejudice in the novel manifests in the characters' tendency to form opinions based on preconceptions rather than reality. As the title suggests, prejudice is closely aligned to pride, often causing Elizabeth and Darcy to misinterpret each other's actions and motives. Austen gently satirizes their biases, highlighting how easy it is to criticize prejudice in others while failing to recognize it in oneself. The novel presents prejudice as a phase in moral development, one that can be overcome through reason and empathy. Austen only condemns those who stubbornly refuse to let go of their biases, such as the class conscious Lady Catherine and the manipulative Caroline Bingley. Despite its comedic elements, the novel delivers a profound critique of prejudice and its harmful effects on individuals and society. Family serves as the core of social life in the novel and plays a crucial role in shaping character. It not only provides the Bennet daughters with education and manners, but also determines their prospects for success. Austen illustrates the family's influence by portraying Jane and Elizabeth as intelligent and mature. While Lydia remains reckless and naive, the tension between Elizabeth and her mother, contrasted with her close bond with Mr. Bennet, reflects the range of emotions that define family dynamics. The Gardiners serve as an example of extended family support, stepping in as surrogate parents and offering Elizabeth much needed guidance during pivotal moments. Through these relationships, Austen emphasizes the significant role family plays in personal development and social mobility.